Hey booktube, welcome to Jack's Reading Corner. I'm Jack, and it's finally halfway through the year, and I'm going to give you, this is basically an update video on my reading stats so far. Now, I did take, I think I told you this back in the beginning, that I did have, create a document on Word, on recording how many of each types of books I've read, and, I don't have percentages. Percentages just, I'm not very good with those. But, so I don't, although I kind of stopped after a while, stopped updating it regular every time I finished a book at one point. So I don't know how accurate this is. And also some of the books that I consider of certain genres, I'm not 100% sure if this would be considered also part of this genre as well. So, according to my reading record, as I call it, as far as genre goes, as of this year, I have read, halfway through the year, I read 14 fantasy. I mean, I'll always read more fantasy than most of my genres. And I read 4 horror books, 5 science fiction, 12 literary, 7 mystery, 4 classics, 1 nonfiction, and 9 historical fiction. And then, as far as age range goes, and that's adult, young adult, and middle grade. I don't include new adult on this document, but my bullet journal I did include new adult, because I have read at least a couple new adult books. So as far as adult, I've read 20. Young adult, I've read 5, which I think is a good sign, because I did want to read more adult books this year. And 2 middle grade books. Although, I guess I've read more than 2, because I read the last 2 books in the Dragon Rider Chronicles, which I believe, from what I read, it's more of a middle grade writing. So I guess maybe that should be upgraded to 3. And so for the series, I've progressed in our the Caraval series. I've read the 2nd book, Legendary, but I have not bought Finale yet, so I haven't read that one yet. I started the Renegade series, and I've read Renegades, obviously. Defy the Stars, the Constellation trilogy. Now that's one that I liked it and had a good time with it, but I don't know if, I haven't felt the desire to go buy the next book. After I finished it, I was like, oh, I want to read the next book, but now it's, it's like I'm not desperate to read the next book. I would like to, but I'm not. And then Royal Assassin, I've read this, and that's the 2nd book in the Farseer trilogy. And then I finally finished the Brain Chronicles in the Shadowhunter Chronicles. I just consider that a whole big series. Cassandra Clare's books, all her books, one big series. Kind of like how Brandon Sanderson and Robin Hobb writes, where they have that one big series, but there's a little individual series or trilogies in between within the I finally finished Nevernight, which I was very proud of that, because that was one of the books I had started a while back, and I had stopped reading it, but I finally finished it. And then I read, and technically this isn't a traditional series, but I feel like graphic with, it kind of is and it isn't. It's the Gotham Sirens book 1. I feel like you could consider graphic novels, especially the superhero ones, are kind of an overarching, kind of are a series, because they're not always. I mean, sometimes they have individual stories, but sometimes they have stories that continue into another comic or another graphic novel. And I'm sure Terry from Florida would be happy that I was incredibly happy that I finished that one. And then I finally finished Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, Gentleman Bastard series, the 1st book, and I finally got my mom to get me this, the second book, which I had the third book, which I did not realize that was the third book when I bought it. So I still hadn't had the second one. I kept saying I was gonna buy it, and sometimes I would see it and then pass over it, and sometimes it wouldn't be there. But finally, I just asked my mom to get it for me online, but first I had to finish the first book, and then I told her that I had finished it and I would like to read the second book. And I think the only reason why she bought it for me was because she's hoping that I will read it right away. So I think I might bring it with me to South Carolina when we go visit my grandma and go for my cousin's graduation. Although I don't think we're actually going to the physical ceremony. I think we're just gonna go to the party, because really we were only gonna be there to root for her. I mean, we were only gonna cheer for her. That was the only person we cared about, because we don't know any of the other students. So I think it's like, is it worth sitting for hours for that long ceremony? And her last name starts with W, so she was gonna be like way at the bottom, like one of the last people called. So that's all the series so far that I've completed. That I've read a book in the series, and now this next one is series. So I guess these technically aren't really stats, because it's not percentages or anything like that. It's just the list. So I guess I can take out that part. And then I finished the series. Were Dragon Rider Chronicles by Nicole Conway. That's one of the Middle grade books I read. And then I finally finished Six of Crows duology. I finished Crooked Kingdom, and the other day I finally finished the Shades of Magic trilogy and read A Conjuring of the Light. Yay me! And then now, as far as DNFs, I've DNF'd a few. I think I've DNF'd 4, possibly 5 books. So the Vanishing Throne, by Elizabeth May, is sitting. I have it in a corner there with books that I donate. But I keep debating if I want to continue, if I want to actually read that whole trilogy, because I started it was entertaining, but I wasn't excited to read it. I was excited about other books that I wanted to read. And it felt like it was typical YA fantasy, but I did appreciate that it was fairies. It wasn't just the traditional vampires, werewolves, or elves or something. It was about fairies. You see like vampires and werewolves and witches all the time. I'm still sick, obviously. But, so I don't know if I'm going to continue with that trilogy or not. Okay, and then The Flight of Gemma Hardy by Margot Livesey. And that is a Jane Eyre retelling, and I just wasn't feeling it. And then I looked up on Goodreads people's reviews, and some of the stuff I read, I wasn't too keen on. And then, I don't think this is the last book I DNF'd, but, then The Lonely Hearts Hotel by Heather O'Neill. I think that was kind of magical realism. And it was a little too, like, I'm fine with crassness, but I don't like it when it's mixed with whimsical fluffiness and then crassness mixed together. It's a weird combo for me, and that's what it felt like. Like, it had some whimsy and magicalness, but it also was very crass when it's language, and like in the beginning there was a little boy gets raped, one of our main characters. So there's that. Okay, so basically, one second. Let me look at Goodreads. So according to Goodreads, I'm 44 books into my goal of 100 books. But some of those books. I guess the other book I DNF'd was Orcs, because when I first got it, I was definitely interested in it because you don't see a lot of stories about the orcs in fantasy worlds. Like, the orcs are always the minions, they're the lackeys, they're the brutes, there's not much. So I was interested because because it was different. It was a story about orcs, but then I made the mistake of waiting too long to read it, I guess, and lost interest. But, it wasn't a bad book. So that was another DNF, and I ended up returning it back to the Gibbons bookstore, because that's where I bought it. Which, it's funny, a lot of the books I've gotten DNF'd and gotten rid of, I've donated back to the place where I bought them, which was the Gibbons bookstore. And I remember at first I felt kind of weird about that. I felt like I had to keep them almost. But that's just a lame excuse to, So the one nonfiction I read was a true crime book, The Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. It's not written like it's not written like a nonfiction book, but I think true crime is considered nonfiction. It was written more like a narrative, like a story, which really helped me be able to get into it, because nonfiction, I feel like sometimes the writing can be really dry, and it can be basically like you're reading a textbook. That's why I really like memoirs, because I read Home, a memoir of my early years by Julie Andrews, and I really liked that one. And it wasn't just it didn't feel like a textbook. Although sometimes I feel like I don't give them nonfiction a chance. I need to do that, because I've read I have liked what I've read so far, Marie Antoinette, The Journey by what's her name, Antonia Fraser. I did like that, and definitely is interesting, and I want to keep going with it. It's just not my first book I pick up. It's not my go-to book. And like I said, the YAs I've read are The Falconer. I've read Legendary, Renegades. Let's see it's Crooked Kingdom. I think it's considered a YA. I did start with. Let's see what else. I think I Captured the Castle as a YA. And so I know that Mistborn was republished as a young adult book series, because one of the main characters is a young adult. So, which was kind of annoying, because it's like, I just get very, I get really frustrated, because, it's like I was like, oh, I'm reading an adult fantasy, and I'm so proud of myself, and I was able to finish it, and then to find out, oh, by the way, it's been republished as a young adult book, so it kind of burst my bubble a little bit. And also, I feel like the only reason it's considered young adult is because one of the main characters starts out as a young adult, or how most main characters are in young adult books. But then she gets to adulthood, legal adulthood, at least legal in our world. I don't know if being be considered legal in that world, but and let's see. And then there are some classics that were considered. I Captured the Castle and Tree Girls in Brooklyn. I feel like those are young adult classics. The Bane Chronicles. Let's see. I don't. Okay, and I think that's all the young adult books I read, or books that are considered young adult. As far as classics, let's see, I read Persuasion. Oh, To Find the Stars is the other young adult book I read. which to me, that was kind of like, I mean, I'm sorry, like, no disrespect to Jane Austen, people who love Jane Austen, and her writing is great, and I love what she does, and she was writing what she knew, and what she cared about, so, but for me, it was just like, not a lot happened, and it was kind of, I'm sorry, but kind of boring to me. Like, it was just characters talking and talking about their feelings, and there wasn't even a party scene. Actually, no, there might have been one. I don't even remember. I don't even remember the female, our heroine's first name. I just remember the guy's name, which is Captain Wentworth. But, and this is, the most exciting thing that happened is, I think another girl broke her leg or something. What I liked about Pride and Prejudice is, I think, what everybody likes. First of all, the couple was so interesting and complicated and messy. Like you got Darcy, was such a complex character, and he was struggling with these feelings he was developing for Elizabeth Bennet. She was strong-willed and so intelligent, and had such high standards, and you're just. And I imagine for those of us who already read the book and know that one character is a total butthead, you are like, I can't believe this. I can't believe Elizabeth Bennet was so smart, yet she fell for this character's BS. And I feel like the mom, even though on the surface, like Steve Donahue, I was watching his videos. I was kind of interested in his thoughts on Pride and Prejudice. I was watching his videos on the read-along of Pride and Prejudice he did, and he put some interesting things that I didn't even think about when I read it. About that, Elizabeth's mom gets quite a bad rep because she's kind of silly and desperate to elevate her daughters, and she's kind of seen as a very annoying character. But, you can't blame her for how she acted. Like, the only way her daughters would live well was if they married rich guys. They would not inherit their father's money, or their cousin would. And she did love her daughters, So, she did what any mother of that time period would probably do. So she's actually not the worst person ever. I mean, she's, you kind of feel bad for her if you really think about her motives, if you kind of understand why she acts the way she does. But anyway, back to Pride and Persuasion. I couldn't get into it, and I did kind of cheat and just skipped some chapters. Like, at least one chapter, because I was like, what more? There's nothing, you might learn in the chapter certain things, but I don't think I was going to miss out on anything. And I think I would probably enjoy the movie more than the book, and I enjoyed the book. But, now, Olive from a Book Olive has really got me interested in Mansfield Park. And I liked the movie Lady Susan, and it's a quick one, even quicker than the others. And I'm also kind of curious about Emma, because that one looks like fun, and everyone loves Emma's character. Like, they find her one of the Jane Austen's best characters. So I'm kind of excited about that. So, and it's more like a book, one of those things that you just feel like a reader feels like they just gotta do. They just, to say you read Jane Austen. And I think a lot of fantasy people would feel like feeling that way about Lord of the Rings. They would feel like, oh, I have to say that I've read Lord of the Rings. I feel accomplished. Although I've donated my Lord of the Rings books, to Terry from Florida. And I told her she can keep them because I don't know if I would ever read them. I can always rebuy them if I wanted to. Let's see. But anyway, I also read Crime and Punishment, which I kind of started last year. I think 2018 I started that book. So I finally read it, and I'm so glad I did. Like, the beginning's a little slow, but it was such an engaging story, so fascinating. You want to know how things were going to turn out for our main character. Was he going to get away with what he did, and what was going to happen to his sister? You know, I just had to know. I'm so intrigued, and I don't know if this is just Russian writers, but so far my experience, like with that book, and I'm reading War and Peace right now, which it's two different authors, but they both have a similar writing style that I can get by and follow and get into. Now, War and Peace is of course a bigger, chunkier book, but still, it's easy for me to get into compared to the Count of Monte Cristo, which feels more like it's written like a Jane Austen novel, but it has more plot that I'm interested in, other than a Jane Austen novel. But the writing style feels very much like Austen or the Bronte sisters or Gaskell, where it's hard for me to explain it. But so I really enjoyed that. Let's see, any other classics I've read? Oh, I guess A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And I think by today's standards, that would definitely be kind of a YA, because our main character is an actual teenager. It's about her growing up in Brooklyn, and she's Jewish. It's just about her life and in the early 1900s and how unglamorous it was. So I like that one. I'm glad I read it. And then I Captured the Castle. I read that one, which I found very, very interesting. Again, that was another one that I liked it, but not a lot happened in it. I mean, I was definitely intrigued and wanted to know if our main character was going to get the guy that she was in love with or not. And I was a little disappointed by the ending, but still a good read. The other classics. Oh, and I guess The Handmaid's Tale would be classic, or modern classic. That was interesting. I liked it. It wasn't my favorite book in the world, but I enjoyed it. I was interested in it. And it was a quick read also, so I appreciate that. Now, as far as literary, this was one that I wasn't, well, first before I get to literary, let's talk, okay, so horror books. The Winter People is kind of a ghost story, so I consider that horror. Let's see. The other horror books I said earlier were kind of more mystery than horror. But they had horrible things, scary things happening to people. Charlene Harris, she wrote other books besides the Sookie Stackhouse series, which is A Secret Rage, which is about there's a rapist in this small southern town. It's about one of the victims getting proactive and wanting to stop him. And on top of that, because she's an actress, she is judged for being an actress, and then she's also dealing with the fact that she's getting older, and Hollywood is very fickle. So, if we were villains, it didn't, someone gets murdered, so I guess in a way that was horror. Let's see. Well, excuse me, Works has a kind of scary cover. The Little Stranger, I wouldn't call that really, that was one of those ones that's like, it's one of those stories that, is there or isn't there a ghost kind of situation. I like to think there was a ghost, or that the house really was haunted. Oh, and I guess Revival is kind of a horror, but it has a different, not, by Stephen King, but it's not one of his traditional horror, there's a monster or there's a ghost or something. It's more of like this guy, after this preacher turns away from God after his family is killed in a terrible accident, a car accident, and so he's obsessed with finding if there's an afterlife and if he can heal people, and it's more of that. It's the kind of horror where there's not, the monster is actually a human being, and he's obsessed point of scary. I thought that was okay. I mean, some of the criticisms people gave it, I agree with that. You wanted to see more of the preacher's journey, his story, but we didn't get his story because it was from the point of view of this young man who met him and kind of starts to keep an eye on him and follow his career and stuff, because especially since he healed this young man of his heroin addiction, but there were consequences to it. And it's about the relationship that develops between them, but the problem is that their interactions are so sporadic. They only come across each other a few times, and they have more interaction years later when our main character, our narrator, is like in his 50s, and the preacher guy is like really, really old. I think I got all the horror. As far as sci-fi, I read Defy the Stars, Renegades. Defy the Stars is kind of an AI story in a futuristic world where I think Earth has been kind of screwed up. Renegades is basically kind of a superhero story. It's the world has begun to rely too much on superheroes, and there is this group of people that are the villains who are trying to stop them. So it shows kind of a gray area between those with the label of superhero and those with the label of supervillain. That it's a lot more complicated than that. And this one young girl is sent to infiltrate the good guys, the superheroes. And she starts to get to know them and realize that they're not such bad people after all. Just, they have good intentions. They just a little bit dangerous about it. Any other? I don't remember more. I don't know what you would consider the Gotham universe, because there is magic in there, but a lot of it is more sci-fi. But in this one, in that graphic novel, there is the magic in there. Sci-fi. In a way, The Handmaid's Tale is kind of sci-fi, not with the science and all, but have a dystopian world, and I think that's considered sci-fi. And that one, like I said, I told you how I felt about that one. Now, as far as literary, the two middle grade books I read I finished. Oh, wait, maybe I finished. I guess Station 11 would be. I feel like that is a sci-fi as well. I didn't include that one. That's in a post-apocalyptic world. I forgot about that one. Okay, so back to middle grade. So, Minimus, which is a tale of a 12-year-old prince who gets kidnapped when there's a fight between his kingdom and his father's kingdom and the enemy kingdom, when they tried to form an alliance with the enemies, but then the bad guys tricked him and imprisoned the king and his men, and then they tricked his son, the young prince, into coming, and they basically turned him into a court jester, an apprentice, and it's about his imprisonment and his humiliation and all this horrible stuff he goes through, but then he kind of forms a relationship, a sort of friendship with the court jester, his master, and it's a sweet story. I mean, it's a bit long though. And then I finished, like I said earlier, I finished the Dragon Rider Chronicles by Nicole Conway, which is a series, a quartet, this first one, and and there is another spin-off series that she wrote about the child that is about the child of a character in the original quartet. That one's only a trilogy, but I think I know who her father is from this original story. But it's about this young boy who's half human, half gray elf, and it's found out that he can be a dragon rider, that he's destined to become a dragon rider, and he goes to school and learns and trains, make friends, make enemies, and then it turns out he has the chance to bring the gray elves and the humans together to fight an enemy, to fight, some of those stories, like, he's a chosen one and all that. So those are the middle grade books I read. Now as far as literary, like I said, I had a hard time figuring out what was considered literary and what wasn't. So I'm going to go through the books that I think might be considered literary. Station 11, The Winter People, which I already talked about those. Oh, I didn't really talk about The Winter People. Like I said, it's a ghost story. It's basically, I don't remember it that well. Fortunately, I got rid of it, so I wouldn't, and I probably won't I mean, maybe I will, but I enjoyed it. I'm glad I read it. I had a good time with it, but it wasn't like, I have to keep this book. But it's basically this, I can't really explain it. I don't remember, and I'm kind of tired anyway. If you guys are interested, but it's a good book. It's one of those books that goes back and forth between historical and contemporary setting. So, and then I read The Enchanted, which I think that's kind of magical realism. I think, which is basically about, let's see if I can remember, this one prisoner that, I don't want to get, what is it? Sorry, I'm just really tired, and it's been so long since I read the book. This one prisoner is going to be executed, and this guy is trying to find out what really happened. This woman who, like, this woman who, I think she's like a nun figure, believes that he is actually innocent and wants to hear the real story. And he basically tells her his story, and he kind of, the magical realism aspect is that he believes that there is magic in the prison, or it's easier for him to accept living there, being there for the rest of his life, and looking at it as like a magical place, which I thought was kind of an interesting concept to think about. And then there's Sweet Bitter, which is about this woman who's in her early 20s, who for the first time she leaves her home and goes to live on her own in the city. And she ends up getting mixed up with these two people, this couple that has a really toxic relationship, and learns about the restaurant business in that type of society, and just gets her into this big mess of trouble. It's really good, and I watched someone's review of the book, and they said it was pretty accurate to how restaurant life really is, how people in the restaurant business act. And then, like, I talked about Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. That's true crime. It's basically this writer comes to the South and falls in love with this small town in the South, and it's about his experience there and how he kind of gets mixed up in murder this murder case. And there's this whole trial and everything, and it's him telling the story of that whole experience. Okay, so I'm not gonna talk about that one. Okay, The Immortalist by Chloe Benjamin. It's about 4 siblings live in New York, 4 Jewish siblings living in New York, and they find, when they're kids, they find out that a psychic lives in their neighborhood on their street, and the oldest decides to meet her, decides that they should go see her, and she can tell them what day they're gonna die, how old they're gonna be, and he decides, just for fun, let's meet this woman. And it's basically about how this experience, meeting this woman, the psychic, and hearing their death date and how old they will be, and how it affects each of everyone, even the ones that claim they don't believe in this psychic stuff, how it still creeps in and affects them and their actions. The Female Persuasion by Megan Wolitzer. That is about a college student who meets this famous feminist. She's kind of a Gloria Steinem figure, and their lives become intertwined, and she basically helps this woman pass her message on, and it's working for her. But then she realizes that this woman is not perfect, and how this woman gets, her feminist beliefs kind of get between her and her boyfriend. Let's see. Any other? I don't know if The Essex Servant would be considered literary fiction or not. If We Were Villains, I think that's literary fiction too, but it could be seen as a bit of a mystery. I read The Archivist. That was the last book I've updated. I did a review of it on Goodreads. A review on here. The Archivist by Martha Cooley. I don't know if you would consider Sarah Waters' books literary, but although I guess that would also be considered. I don't know if it would consider horror or not, or at least suspense or something, because there was an implication of the house being haunted. But like I said earlier, it's one of those, was there or wasn't there a ghost kind of thing. The Archive, let's see. Then as far as as far as fantasy goes, like I said, you could say The Enchanted is kind of fantasy, because it's magical realism. Legendary, of course, it's the sequel to Caraval, which is based, I liked that sequel like everybody else did, or most people did. Minimus is fantasy. Crooked Kingdom. The Falconer. The Farseer, Robin Hobbs, The Assassin's Royal Assassin. And that's also an adult book. The Immortal. Let's see what else. And I did start, and then there's The Vanished Throne, which was a DNF, so I did start that one. The Essex Servant was one of those that it had potentially could have had fantasy elements, but it turns out it wasn't. The Hero of Ages. Revival kind of had a sort of sci-fi fantasy feel to it at times. I said The Bane Chronicles, I finally finished that one. Nevernight, I really liked that one. I'm with most people, and I loved it. And I like how brutal it was, and how the assassin she's a real assassin. There was blood and gore and stuff. She actually killed people. There's actual assassinating going on, and And they didn't just learn how to fight and defend themselves and, stab people, but they actually learned the other aspects of being an assassin, like the undercover work and stuff like that, and other ways to kill people other than stabbing them. And then I read The Last Wish, and I'm hoping to read The Sword of Destiny, which is the sequel. The Last Wish was technically the first book in the Witcher series about this monster hunter. And that first book was a collection of short stories introducing the character. And then I think Sword of Destiny is also like that as well. So you don't really get into the series until Blood of Elves comes into play. I think that's what the first actual story. And then let's see. After that, I read, Ghouls of War and The Welsh Witch were, I don't know what they were, because they were like short stories or novellas or something. Like, they were okay. They weren't wow, but they were kind of fun. And then they were adapted by P.L. McCall. And I met him at SuperCon. And I feel bad that I didn't like him that much. I feel bad that I wasn't a huge fan. But I'm glad I actually read them this time. And I read 2 of them, and I'm gonna read the next one, the sequel, and then I'm gonna read his poetry collection. And then I read The Lies of Locke Lamora, which was the first, and I mentioned that. That was fun. I can't wait to jump into the second book. And I wonder if we're gonna meet the love interest in the second book, because we were introduced to characters that we were introduced to the love interest. I mean, we didn't actually meet her, but she was brought up. I think she's a love interest, because the other female character got killed in the first book. And then I also mentioned that I read Conjuring to Fly, the final book in the Shades of Magic trilogy. But the author, she does have other stuff out there. Like, she wrote, the story of, Rye's father. I think that was a graphic novel, though. I had a good time. The finale was great. A lot of good things. And I liked, Lila a little bit better in this third one. She's still not my favorite character, but I did like her a little bit. And I can understand why the author created this character, because opposites attract. And from what I've heard, people sarcastically pointed out that she tends to make a lot of characters that are very similar to each other, kind of have that brash, I'm a badass bitch and I'm awesome, and I'm not like Miss Sentimental Romantic type. No. That kind of type of character, if that makes any sense. Oh, and Lincoln the Bard. Now, as far as litter, I also read Lincoln in the Bardo, which that was really interesting. That was written like a script, I feel like. Basically, it's about the death of Abraham Lincoln's son and how the Lincoln family dealt with that. And I think that was kind of brought up in Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, that book by Graham Greene. I think that storyline was also in there, but I mean, it makes sense because I think it really did happen. His son died of something, like a disease or something. And it's kind of about his son living in this graveyard with a ghost. And it kind of reminds me of The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, in the fact that it's this young man who died, living with ghosts and being kind of raised by the ghosts, except for Lincoln's son is actually dead. He just doesn't know it yet. And in The Graveyard Book, the boy is alive. And it's about the ghost observing life around them and watching the Lincoln family. And it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of written like a script. So it's a quick read. It was very interesting. I read The Rules of Civility was another literary book I read. That was really good. Um, and I don't, like I said, I don't know if I guess Sarah Waters would be considered literary. She that the book The Little Stranger, it's basically about this doctor, this English doctor who's middle class, and he kind of becomes entwined with this rich family that live at this famous house that he's always admired from afar and was fascinated by. And he kind of gets entwined with their lives. He tries to help. This is post World War One or World War Two, and he tries to help the one man of the male family member that's supposed to, follow his father's footsteps. He's going through PTSD and stuff, and he's the first one who kind of has the encounter with the ghost, and he's struggling with dealing with that. And our main character tries to help him through that and help take care of him. And his leg has been ruined and damaged by the war, so he tries to fix his leg. And then he kind of develops a fondness for his sister, the young man's sister, and falls in love with her even and wants to marry her, but she doesn't feel the same way about him. She doesn't. And so it's a very complicated story. I hate it. I hate when I have this because I hate having a tickle in my throat. Like I need to cough, but it's not enough. My throat just feels really scratchy and irritated. So that was good. So really, that's all I'm gonna say. I think on the books I've read, and of course, I still don't know what I'm gonna. I feel like I've failed on the Stephen King project because I've kind of stepped back from reading any Stephen King, and I feel like I need to read some Stephen King, even if it means reading some of his short stories. Because I have The Stand, my reread of it. I started those, and then I started reading Needful Things, particularly because I joined Missy Binge Readers Goodreads group, where they're reading a Stephen King book a month. But the problem is Stephen King's books are chunky. They take a long time to read. I mean, I think you'll read his novellas and short stories in a month, possibly, but not his whole novel, not just one novel. I mean, even Missy herself has fallen behind. I just think it's impossible to read his books in a month. Those books are so long. They're more than 500 pages, I think. And, I read, I'm tempted to read this one, 4 Past Midnight, and I started reading Secret Garden, Secret Window, which is what the movie Secret Window is based on, the Johnny Depp movie. I was going to read that one, but it's, I feel like the reason why I was not engaged in the story is because I knew everything that was going to happen. It wasn't like a surprise or anything. So I think I might start reading his other stories, like The Library Policeman, and then there's The Sun Dog. That's the next one. I'm still reading Count of Monte Cristo, and then I'm almost done with King of Scars. And like I said, I just felt this desire to start reading War and Peace. So I started reading that. Like I said, I like what I've read of Russian literature. I like the writing style. It's more straight to the point, not super flowery, which I don't mind flowery writing. It's just sometimes it takes me a lot longer to read books that are more flowery with their writing style. So I don't know how long it would take me to read if I ever decided to read Laini Taylor's what was that book called? Not her series, but that one that came out last year that everyone was in love with. Or maybe it came out in 2017, the first book anyway. Strange the Dreamer. Granted, it's a modern book, so maybe it wouldn't take me as long, I don't know. So, I definitely need to read some more Stephen King. But it's just, all his books take me forever to read, and sometimes I'm not always engaged in them at the moment. I like them and I enjoy them, but sometimes I end up losing interest temporarily. So I gotta read that, but maybe starting with 4 Past Midnight, read some more of his short stories maybe again, because I've slowly been collecting his. I mean, well, although the one accomplishment, like I said, I joined Missy's group on Goodreads, and then I've also bought, although I did recently just get rid of one, or I'm going to donate it, and that's the Cell, because I don't know if I would be as interested in that one. But I have bought quite a lot of his. I'm expanding my collection of Stephen King. Nightmares and Dreamscapes. That's Market Paperback Edition. I bought that one. See if I can see that. I still haven't bought the last book in the Dark Tower series yet. But I decided I'm going to reread that series from the beginning. It's been so long that I just need to reread it. Full Dark, No Stars. Oh, well, I think you guys already knew about that one. And then I've also started buying some Agatha. I have now 3 Agatha Christie's. I have The Burden, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and then there were none. Yay! I finally got it. That's the one I was most interested in, and I finally found it at the bookstore. I gave it in the bookstore, so I was very happy, and I had to buy it. So, and the mass paperbacks. The mass markets are $2, so I didn't spend that much. But it was so cool to finally find it. And I got Misery for my birthday, which is that one about the writer, and he gets kidnapped by his fan who breaks his foot and all that stuff. But I think she does something different. Like the movie and the book have a different thing that she does to his foot. Where she causes a lot of damage to the point he can't escape. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop there. Since this is getting pretty long, hopefully this video will upload. If not, I'm gonna have to redo it. It won't matter what I'm saying right now. So, if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And click subscribe if you hadn't. If you haven't yet, I would really appreciate it. And we'll love to know how your reading is going this year. Feel free to share in the comments below. And if you want to be notified when I post new videos, click the bell icon below. And as always, I hope you are enjoying your reading. And I will talk to y'all later. Alright, bye!